Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Behind the Screens, your favorite esports and gaming talk show here at Radio UTD. I'm Hector.
I'm Hitarth.
And I'm Adi. And this week, boy, do we have a hell of a world that got turned upside down.
Oh, man.
We do.
One that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, it was the Smash community and the extreme amount of cases that are getting uncovered because due to COVID-19, a lot of tournaments and all that got put on pause. And somebody decided to talk about their negative experience that happened within the Smash community, signs of sexual harassment, abuse, and all that. And this essentially opened the floodgates to a whole bunch of cases of sexual harassment and abuse coming out. And the people involved in this are honestly shocking. And so to start it off, we have a few cases that we'd like to talk about. But the first one, when it came to the chronological order, was Cinepi, who is a decently well-known media person for Smash, and she had a relationship with I'm not gonna say professional player, but he was like a pretty well-known player,
Like an up-and-coming 14-year-old.
Like, he was a really good player, especially for his age.
Whose name is Puppeh, the Puppeh, and keep in mind for this, he was 14 and she was 24.
Yeah, so I guess we're probably not going to go too in depth regarding all of these things, but we kind of just want to touch bases on kind of what went down in the community and the over-encompassing kind of problem with a lot of these cases and how this unfortunately has unfolded, but also looking at the benefits of it happening now rather than later being held. And it's also just good for the community to get rid of these figureheads that are not really morally correct in just the world in general.
And if we talk about stuff that you guys want to look into a little more, I can guarantee you, if you just look up any of our the names of the people we mentioned, at least their tags on Twitter, there's a whole bunch of twit mongers.
Oh yeah,
and all
absolutely.
That.
You will find the information you're looking for.
So that's if you want the whole full scale of it. You can read that yourself. We're just gonna briefly go over some of them.
Yeah, and we can put some of the articles of some of the cases down below in the description. So if you did want to read into those will be there. But yeah, go ahead if you wanted to start talking about maybe some of the other cases that went down.
Yeah, and the reason I'm mentioning the specific people I do that are involved in this is to show that it's not just the players, who mess these things up. It's also other major members of the community. The next two cases that I'm about to mention are D1 and Hector, who are commentators. They're very, very well known, and they also had cases of going after minors is the best way that I can put it.
Yeah.
And it just makes you wonder just how many more of these people were here all along but have silenced the people just so they don't get in trouble.
And if you watch videos for these people, you probably love them. Their videos are amazing, their commentary and their content they put out, and sometimes you'd never expect that these people would be doing this kind of stuff, and it's just honestly shocking.
Exactly, that's what I was gonna say is it's oftentimes the people you would think the least likely to do stuff like this, and obviously it's hard to assume certain things, but granted that these people were very highly seen as from the community, like you were mentioning, Hitarth. It's kind of unfortunate that it ended up occurring, but I think like you mentioned, Keitaro and D1 being commentators for Smash Bros, they're very well respected in the community. And then we also have a very big player in the community, Nairo.
Yeah, the next two are... Let's focus on Nairo first, because he, I think, was still the person that sent the biggest shock throughout the Smash community, because he's one of the biggest professional players in the Smash Ultimate scene. I mean, and a very, very big content creator for Smash Ultimate. I used to watch him actively up until this came out, and he used to play with Keitaro a lot, and it's hard knowing that I enjoyed his content, knowing that he also did stuff like this.
Yeah, exactly, because it was going on for a while now. I mean, And so I guess going more in specifics to Kitaro's scenario, or rather Nairo, sorry, he was actually having some sexual relationships with another professional player, being Captain Zach. And at the time, Captain Zach was, I believe, 14, 15.
I think he was 15 years old, yeah.
Yeah, so that alone is just like all red flags. But what really set it off was the fact that he was actually paying off Captain Zach to keep like quiet and hush about the whole thing, and like using different names when he was sending stuff through PayPal and stuff like that. And so like the whole thing unfolds, and it seems rather like surreal, and it almost seems like it's like a movie unfolding because of how exaggerated everything seems, but it's like sadly the truth. And so I think it's very important that Captain Zach came out about this, and there's a lot of point of views as far as who was in the wrong. Obviously, without a doubt, Nairo is definitely at fault because of this due to his age, but there's just a ton of cancel culture kind of thing, which is very popular as of right now, with people in the community, not just Smash, but in the internet community in general, being quote unquote canceled and removed kind of from the eyes of everyone if they've done something morally incorrect.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, and again, like the thing that shocks me about Nairo is, personality that I watch. I enjoyed his stuff, and when you look at a person like that, you're like, I would never in a million years imagine like looking at Nairo and saying like, yeah, that dude did something that's pedophilic. Like,
yeah, you just
that's so hard to imagine.
Yeah, it's terrible, and I mean like, and there's no fault to the fans because like I mentioned, they're keeping everything hush hush, so it's like you wouldn't even anticipate something like this happening. And I do think that there were some accusations or some things from other players coming out saying that a lot of other pro players were aware of this relationship or this sort of whatever was going on there, but that's also been sparking a lot of conversations as far as which pro players may have known about this but were keeping it secret. They're also held accountable for that sort of relationship going on, and if this does get into a legal battle of sorts and some sort of repercussions with jail or something like that, which is not unlikely, then even those players that were just in knowledge of it but not actually participating could be held accountable.
Yeah, and a lot of this talk brought up, and I wanted to discuss this along with the final case that I want to mention for this, being Zero, who is pretty much the best player when it came to Smash 4, and he had a streak of tournaments where he absolutely dominated. I think it was like he won 50 tournaments, like major tournaments in a row before somebody was able to like break his streak.
Yep.
And he also got canceled. And this one, like, well, of course he did a lot of bad things, but this situation is a little worse because he made 3 different Twitlongers, essentially speeches saying like, oh, this is why, like, I'm sorry and all that. He made 3 different ones, and one of the people who was troubled by this, because they knew that wasn't all the information that was supposed to be revealed, he hadn't apologized for everything, only the stuff that had come up, went out of her way and gathered every small little thing that he had done that was wrong. And to be fair, there is absolutely a lot. It's 64 pages of proof regarding what Zero did.
And that's not just like text, it's like tons of picture evidence, and it goes on to like full like imager links with like 30 text pages. It's just super intricate, and like I think we were talking about this, I think it took her like 4 to 5 days to like fully make.
4 to 5 days, and then like she said that she didn't sleep.
Yeah, which is just ridiculous, and I think that goes to show like how emotionally straining this was, and how it was like it was a really big issue to her personally and a lot of other people that she knew personally, that it was just she had to get it out there and had to basically speak her mind.
It also really brings up like how deep-seated this sort of stuff is. It's not like it popped up like out of nowhere, like one day people are just bad people,
Yeah.
Like, it's been going on for a long time, and it's just now that the Smash Brothers community is like looking it in the eyes and saying, no, this is not acceptable in any form or fashion.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that in itself is fantastic. That the majority, I will say, of the Smash community is siding with the victims and basically canceling out those figureheads that are doing very malicious things and very abusive things potentially. And I think that's just great for the community and gaming in general. So I think that's a good thing.
I think it's really big, especially for the Smash community, because those tournaments are ones, I believe Audie mentioned this to me once, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. That those tournaments are a place where, like, both people, like, underage and people, like, above age, adults, are, like, gathered in one place doing basically the same thing, which is playing Smash.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
So
good
it's
point.
like, that needs to be, like, a really safe spot for people, and so honestly, I'm glad that this stuff is getting exposed and like the Smash community is taking care of this.
And then another thing that I forgot to mention is at these usually like major tournaments, you know, there's a lot of people going there, underage and of age people. There's also a lot of alcohol being served.
Yep, at like
yeah.
after parties
in-house.
and such.
No,
Yep.
like at the tournament.
Like
Oh,
at the actual
really?
event, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yep.
like this is when like minors are still around, and it's just like, what's the point? Like, if you want to do it for after party, you know, that's separate from the event. Go ahead. But if you're gonna have like be selling alcohol at a place where like minors are there and they're not required to be there with a legal guardian, you know, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's definitely when things can go wrong.
Yeah, that is definitely a problem. So then I guess it comes down to like regulation, and then this could also stem out to arguments about Nintendo's involvement with tournaments. And I mean, this doesn't just come down to like minor tournaments, local stuff. Like this can be like large scale tournaments that are major tournaments, but Nintendo's involvement in a lot of these are close to none. So I mean, an argument could be presented that it could also be the fault of Nintendo for not kind of regulating these tournaments a little more strictly.
I mean, you could say that, but Nintendo for one has always been like a very, very hands-off approach with how they treat their Smash Brothers like esports scene.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so,
that's true, but me personally, regarding the situation, I feel like that shouldn't necessarily be the case, especially after all of these things. I think in order to keep the reputation of Nintendo, like in general for like esports kind of things, needs to kind of put their foot down and kind of establish like, this is wrong. We're gonna make changes in order to make these major tournaments that our players are playing at safer for those younger audience.
I mean, I believe they did release a statement saying that they condemn all of the negative behavior that's happened, and of course they support the victims, but I think that's the extent of what Nintendo's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
mean,
honestly, I don't see them doing like anything more realistically.
I don't either.
Just because of how much involvement they already currently like don't have. There was just always like that like on the sideline kind of thing. It's just like, yeah, Nintendo. It's like, yeah, sure, tournaments are happening, and yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I'm not necessarily saying that is like the general consensus, but for me personally, or I'm sure there's many people that think this way as well, is just like, this may have been somewhat prevented in some cases if there was a little more involvement and regulation at these sort of tournaments.
For sure, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, of course.
But-
and then
No, go ahead.
one more good point that I saw someone raise, and this is another like semi-professional player that I follow. His name is Locus, and he brought up this very good point of idolization of professional players, and how some people were jumping to the defense of like Nairo and Zero and all that just because they were like this like professional players that they looked up to, and you know, like, this idolization is wrong.
Definitely.
Yeah,
And I
it's
think it could stem to a lot of other very bad things, to be honest.
Yeah, they're just like, I want this person to stay because, you know, like, they mean something to me, but you need to recognize that, you know, they're bad people. And I think the best person who I heard made a comment about this, and this is a person Hector's familiar with, is Ludwig.
Yes.
And he
Yes,
made a
sir.
comment about how professionals for Smash Ultimate are simply good at a game, nothing else.
Yeah.
They're good at video games, and that's the reason that they went professional. If they're bad people that are good at video games, you need to get them out so that good people that are good at video games can come in instead. And I feel like that's an excellent point and an excellent way to put it.
Yeah, and I think this was another thing that was mentioned similarly to that, and it was some tweet I saw regarding the Nairo situation saying, many of you love Nairo, but you don't truly know Nairobi, which is his actual name. And I think that speaks numbers. Because we know his persona online, Nairo, the character, the amazing player at Smash Bros.
The entertainer.
Exactly, yeah. But we didn't know his backstory and what has happened in his life or what's happening now or what he's doing behind the scenes that no one knows besides maybe a couple people. And that's truly what it stems down to is we don't know what a lot of these players are doing and a lot of these people and celebrities that we look up to in general. So it's really hard on the fans and stuff like that when they see something like this where they trust a figurehead that much and their trust is just skewed instantly because of something like this happening. And I think although it sadly does happen, it's ultimately for the better of society.
And another good thing, the person I mentioned earlier, Locust, who gave like good advice, also said like the reason we shouldn't idolize players is for the stuff that we mentioned already. But if you're gonna idolize something, idolize the traits that you like from them and separate them from the person. Idolize to like become smarter, but don't associate that with like a certain person. Just idolize that trait and work towards that instead.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great suggestion. But I mean, I guess we basically covered majority of the stuff for that. Like we mentioned, if you did want to read more on that, feel free to look it up, or we'll put some articles in the description.
Yeah,
but
we'll definitely have links in the description for a lot of these, like Twitlongers or Twitters. I'll have links as well.
It is a lot of heavy reading since a lot of things that happened, and it is a very heavy subject. So please be advised of that before you decide to go in, if should you decide to go in. But what else do we have to talk about today?
We got some news for a new Ubisoft game coming out. A lot of the people are calling it Fortnite Killer. It's called Hyperscape. It's a battle royale game that is similar to like the Fortnite, Apex Legends, Warzone style, coming out, and they just released the beta for it. It's a free-to-play sci-fi battle royale, and I don't know much.
I was gonna say, we hope you guys like getting Valorant because this is the exact same way.
Yeah.
More Twitch drops.
We've talked about this previously on other shows, but the concept of having Twitch drops, which for those of you who don't know, is basically watching a Twitch live stream and getting a randomized chance of getting a beta key drop for it, which we've put our input on that if you wanted to go back to that episode, but that alone is just kind of disastrous. I mean, it's smart marketing, terrible for the actual players, but the game is supposed to come out apparently around mid-July, so we're approaching that as of right now, but we are seeing a lot of things regarding the game getting good feedback. Some people don't like it. Me personally, I'm not too interested in it, but what is your guys' take on it, kind of?
So can I butt in with something really fast regarding the way that distributing it? So Valorant tried to do the same thing where they did it via Twitch drops, right? And I kind of understood it a bit more for Valorant because, you know, it had a pretty lengthy beta period. I don't know why they're deciding to pursue the key drop feature off of Twitch, seeing as Hyperscape's beta is only 5 days long.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. Projected to come out around mid-July is what's speculated. Nothing's confirmed as of now, but I mean, that alone is kind of ridiculous. I think the beta for Valorant was, what, like a month or so? Maybe
like
longer?
A month and a half?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was like a little more understandable. You maybe got stuck watching streams for like 3 days. That in itself is annoying, but at least you have the game. This, okay, let's say you missed the announcement. You see the thing a day later. You try getting stuff, and then you end up only being able to play like 1 day of the beta. I think it's just very disastrous for this game, and I don't think it's going to fare well for the launch of the game in general.
See, the thing is, I actually did receive a key because I think there's one of two ways to get a key, which is signing up, like on their website, and then the second is linking your Ubisoft account to Twitch, and then watching somebody who's enabled to drop keys.
Gotcha.
And I did receive a key, and I haven't gotten time to play it, but a week? Like, hello?
Yeah,
it's
that's the part.
not very long.
I don't
So
know.
it's just like, why go like running about this method in the first place? I mean, I understand like for publicity and all that, but it just seemed like such an asinine reason.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I guess I don't know if you guys has seen gameplay of it thus far. I haven't personally played it, just like Audie hasn't, but for me personally, the game very much stems off of that Apex Legends sort of movement, but it seems to have a twist of like jetpacks and random assortment of things and abilities on top of that in my opinion is what I don't like out of most of the games. And like when they incorporated stuff like that in Fortnite, adding like planes and random crap that makes the game like not true to its actual roots, I think it ruins the game. I mean, I haven't played it, so I can't really speak too much on it, but that's where I stand.
I think currently you have a pretty skewed view on the game just from like stuff you've heard. Because if you watch actual gameplay, it's like
I've watched gameplay.
Yeah, so it's like a little similar to what you talked about, but just like not as harsh as you would think it is.
Yeah,
I've looked at it and it honestly seems pretty fun. Like, yeah, it's a battle royale movement similar to Apex, like you said. But I kind of like it a little better just because like the whole idea that you're in like a cityscape and you can get to like rooftops really easily.
I watched one game of Hyperscape, right? And here's what I remember of it. Two people building a wall straight up to the ceiling of the map. And then the more noticeable thing is whenever you pick up weapons around the map, if you find another weapon that's the exact same as yours, you just merge it onto your gun to make it stronger, which I thought was an interesting concept, honestly.
That's interesting. I don't know how it would play in game, but that's what I saw, Audie. Also, the wall, and that's what basically set me. I was like, okay, the movement's kind of interesting. I'm not a huge fan of the fact that people are flying around like it's modern or advanced warfare with like jetpacks and like shooting people. Same difference. I don't know what it's called. That game sucks. But
I mean, we both did mention real Call of Duty games because Advanced Warfare and Infinite Warfare are both of them.
Yeah, true. But like they're like shooting them like midair. Like I'm not about like shooting people as they're like descending from like jetpacks and stuff like that. It's a little weird for me personally. But that whole like wall thing, for those who haven't seen it or haven't played it, I would just look up like one like gameplay because I guarantee it'll be part of it. But it's just like a ginormous like May wall, if you know like Overwatch, and it like I don't even know, it looks so confusing to me personally. I bet once I actually play it, or if I do play it, I'll enjoy it somewhat, but as of right now I am not having that same motivation or drive to try getting the game like I did for like Valorant, for instance.
I get the feeling. I'll try it at least. I mean, I do have like a key for it, and the game does come out in 4 days as of recording. It comes out on July 12th. So, it doesn't hurt to give it a shot. It's going to be free, but I don't know how much I'm going to like it because when it comes to a battle royale, one, I'm not that big on the genre, and still nothing has beat Apex for me. And of note is this Hyperscape is also 3-player.
Okay, so it is similar to Apex in that regard, then.
It is similar to Apex in that regard.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering what company's obsession is with going from 4 players to 3 players. So is 4 too many to grab? Is that what we like officially determined now?
Come on, it is. It's too hard to grab 4 people. I think what a lot of companies now have kind of felt is that 3 might be the most optimal amount for battle royales, because I do think 4 gets a little cluttered. If you saw like Fortnite when it came out, those worked somewhat. The maps are huge in that game. I don't know the scale of maps in this, but like Apex, for instance,
pretty limited if I remember correctly.
Huge, and that game only has trios, and they went down to duos and stuff.
I know one of the things about Hyperscapes is that it has like very, very like fast gameplay. Like a round of Hyperscape does not take long.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot more fast paced. Because not only do you have the regular like mode of the game initially, but then also during like the end of the game, as the match nears its end, a showdown phase will begin, and the crown appears in the middle of the map. So when that phase begins, you can either win by killing like all the other players like normally, or if you can carry the crown for 45 seconds, you'll win.
So you can either play chicken or just go after your enemies.
Yeah.
I don't know if I like that portion,
There's
but
no
I like
duos.
the normal.
Hyperscape has both solo and 3-player matches. I've seen both of those. So
That
I've never
strikes
seen
me as
duos.
odd. If you're gonna already have 3 people, why not go
And
just
just
add a little more time and add 2 people?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think all it realistically takes is like editing the drops as like proportions and percentages. And that's
Of
about
course,
it.
they might do it later on for sure.
Yeah, I was about to say odds are what we're saying right now is gonna be pretty outdated, and it might have it
Yeah.
on release. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I
And
mean that's the
then-
way Apex was as well.
One more thing that sets it apart is like when you die, you're not like actually dead. It's not like you're downed. You can get
So
picked
it's
up.
like the new.
You turn into this like ghost thing or whatever. I want to see if I can find where it talks about it again. But you turn into like this
Echo.
ghost thing. Yeah, an
It's called
echo.
an
Thank
echo.
you. And so you can basically still explore around the map while invisible, and you can get revived if your teammate gets a kill.
That's interesting. I think that's like a rendition in their take on how Call of Duty did theirs, being the Gulag, and how theirs is like you come
that's
back
what it
into a
reminds me of.
1v1 kind of thing. I like the concept of it. I think Fortnite was the first game to not have it. Like, you die, you're dead. Then later on, once Apex came out and did the whole revive at a battle station or whatever it's called, then Fortnite implemented that as well because they realized, realistically, that is probably a good idea.
Yeah,
And then
that's
now
really becoming the norm
Every
for
battle royale
games.
is doing it. Some sort of
I mean,
come back to life thing.
I like that the way you describe it encourages aggressive gameplay to get your teammates back, because what a lot of people do is usually if they're a person down, like they're gonna play like cowardly, because
Yeah.
obviously they're like a person down. But
Yeah,
like,
it's like a
makes-
2v3 or 1v3.
Yeah.
You're just not gonna aggress people.
yeah, it helps. I think probably the game's pace to be faster
I
rather than
agree.
you just sitting in the corner.
It also helps with disconnections, I believe, because I know a big issue with Fortnite when it had that is like, okay, for instance, 2 of your squad members died. You're never going to win a 1v3 at all, period. So it's almost like, might as well just disconnect or just like kill myself on the edge of the map
And
so
just
that I
queue
can just
again.
play again. Because like at that point, people were just like killing themselves or doing whatever to get out of the match. And then it just kind of ruined how lobbies played. And like you said, the pace of the game fell short because it kind of skipped over certain sections of the game where there would be like rotations inwards through the map or something. And I don't know. I enjoy it. I think it can break the game at some points in time where like you can res everyone and then they just have their guns back. But I like how Apex does it where you like respawn without anything, and the same thing with Call of Duty. So I'm sure Hyperscape takes a similar approach as far as that.
Honestly, with all these recent like battle royales being released and being very absorbed with the amount of like player counts, like, oh yeah, you're like in a team of 3 with so many people, I'm surprised Battlefield, like the franchise, hasn't risen up, because wasn't that their whole thing where it's just like an immense amount of people against
Yep.
each other? I
You
feel
know-
like Battlefield, I'm surprised, hasn't taken a crack at that.
Yeah, I've always loved Battlefield. Like, I played Battlefield 4, I played Battlefield 1. I think 1 definitely got a lot of crap, and I don't know. I personally really liked it. I thought it was pretty interesting. For those of you that don't know, Battlefield 1 was kind of a different approach
It went
to
back
the
to like
Battlefield.
World War One, right?
Exactly.
Wasn't that the whole thing?
And so it was cool because like the type of weapons and snipers and everything were like super antique, and like the whole atmosphere. I think personally I didn't play it too much, so for me it was enjoyable because I just played like a few matches maybe every now and then, so I didn't really see what was wrong with the game. But as far as what I can guess, it was probably the map selection and like the game modes, because like you mentioned, that game in like Battlefield 4 and throughout is like 32 versus 32 or 64 versus 64 kind of thing. And so some of those maps were like a little crowded, where like people would get like airplanes and start like bombing things, and it just got like a little chaotic at times.
Chaos, yeah.
So I think that
sounds
was the
crazy.
main. It's fun, honestly. I want you guys to try it out. I think it's on Origin, and
Interesting.
I
I've
don't
never
know.
tried it, so this is interesting to hear. 'Cause I've
I mean,
never
I don't
really
know.
seen
Do
it either.
you think they would announce a Battlefield in like the next generation of consoles
that's
with
a
like
good
the amount
point.
of power that's like floating?
They
Yeah,
might,
I-
especially with the PS5 and everything.
And even there's gonna be a new Xbox game showcase coming up on the 23rd of this month. Actually, Microsoft's first party games showcase, and so that's gonna be kicking off at 11 a.m. And no one really knows what they're gonna announce at that.
so
But
that
some-
could be one. That
yeah,
really could be one of
that
the games
very
on it.
that very well could be one of them. I think Battlefield has been typically announced more on Xbox than it has
Yeah, it's
been
been Xbox
PlayStation.
favored, yeah.
So that very well could be something that is teased or announced, and I think other speculation of stuff that might be coming out then is Psychonauts 2, which I'm not too familiar with. Do you guys know a little bit about that, or?
Psychonauts is one of those cult classic games, and I know Psychonauts was initially revealed and like played on the original Xbox, and so it just kind of spread from there. And it was very, very well received. You know, it was from the mind of Tim Schafer, who's done a bunch of movies. I believe. Hang on, let me go find his resume. I'm just totally like blanking on what he's done.
Yeah,
He's
you're
done
good, but
Grim Fandango, like Broken Age, like Day of the Tentacle, Secret of Monkey Island, which are all like probably unfamiliar to you guys, but they're all like very old school sort of like classic games.
yeah,
I've heard of the Monkey Island one. That
I
one
have
does
as
ring a
well.
bell. I just can't put my head on what exactly it is.
yeah, but I guess one like thing off of that is like it's
Oh, this game.
there's a lot of
Whoa.
independent developers that are making stuff, and due to COVID, there's been such delay of announcements that I'm sure a lot of these could have and would have been announced previously, and maybe not all at once, but now with all the delays of such, the big game companies such as Xbox and PlayStation are kind of announcing on their own times, and with the lack of all these game conventions, I think it's going to be interesting.
They're all going
how
the
people-
direct route.
Exactly, which Nintendo has been doing for a while now. Nintendo kind of opting out of a lot of those game conferences for at least announcements, but typically they have some sort of booth going on.
It's funny because now it just seems
yeah.
like they're opting out of announcements. Period.
Don't get me started. I've talked with Audie about this. I'm pissed that Nintendo is kind of just gone off the face of the planet, like
They've
they are
been-
in Smash, like they are now.
They've been
It's-
very, very, very silent. So the question is, are we gonna go another like 6 to 8 months like we did for the last direct before we see anything Nintendo, or are they just gonna?
And then there's obviously the common speculation, oh, they're going to announce a new Switch, very likely, but I mean, even then it's like,
That's a speculation.
who knows? I mean, that's been a speculation every single direct. Like,
Yeah, everyone's just
legitimately,
like they're gonna announce
Switch
the
Pro.
Switch Pro this time.
every
no.
single big direct.
But
And
like,
so,
who would want that at this point?
I mean,
A
wouldn't
lot more
you?
people than you think, actually.
really?
Yeah,
Think about it.
Because
Limitations of Switch as of right now. For instance, in handheld, 720p. That could be increased to 1080p in handheld, which is a good upscaling on that. That's very
yeah.
possible. Battery life could be improved immensely, because that is kind of low for a sort of console in general. Not so
Especially-
much for a handheld, but I
mean,
think
especially for one that they advertise, that could be both a console and handheld.
Exactly,
That's just a
exactly.
hard place to really get a good battery life for.
Exactly. More iterations of Joy-Cons, maybe a Joy-Cons V2, different colorways of stuff. I mean, there's so many different possibilities and so many routes that
I
they
guess,
could
yeah.
improve the Switch on.
Especially if you compare it to the PS5, yeah, then like specs from that standpoint are
Yeah,
not
exactly.
to mention
Internal
it's
specs.
been- yeah, it's been 3 years, so like better specs for like more affordable prices, maybe like what they initially wanted to do but was out of their price range, is within their scope now. Now that like more time has moved on.
I forget how long the Switch actually has been out.
Exactly.
March 3rd,
For.
2017. It has been over 3 years.
That's crazy to think
Which
about.
is crazy. So I mean, everyone that was saying before Switch Pro, That was kind of weird. They did announce the Switch Lite though a while back, which was kind of unexpected. People assumed they were going to make a new Switch, but they didn't think it was going to be like a more handheld geared one. So now people are really thinking Switch Pro is in the works, has been in the works, and it's going to potentially be announced on this next Direct that's eventually coming out. But that hopefully, like I mentioned, increased resolutions, better graphics cards and processing inside of it.
Hopefully,
go ahead.
It'll be sometime this millennium.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, there was a lot of talk about why they decided to go the route of the processing unit that they put inside of the Switch when they did release it. Because at the time of releasing it, I do know that there was a new NVIDIA Tegra chip that was coming out. People were confused as to why they weren't just including that in the Switch when it came out, because it was already outdated once it released. So it's very plausible that they are going to decide on upgrading small components like that to slowly improve frame rates, maybe making it 60 frames solid, no doubt. I don't know. They kind of never been on the same route as how PlayStation and Xbox has been, especially now with their proposed 120 frames at 1080p, but we'll have to see what Nintendo pulls out.
And then one more thing that I'll mention is, in the case you're wondering, like a few of you might be wondering, like, why aren't you just patient about it? And like, I'm fine with waiting. Like, that doesn't.
I'm
bother
impatient,
me.
is
But,
what.
Yeah, he's impatient.
Hector's
and let me
impatient.
give a good reason why. The last time we got a Nintendo Direct was a Nintendo Direct Mini, which was March 26th of this year, and then after that, silence till May 14th. We got Paper Mario: The Origami King just announced on its own. Like, there was no Direct to go with it. It just existed. It's going to be coming out here in a few days as of this recording. And since May 14th, we haven't really heard anything new. I mean, there was Min Min's release. We already talked about that in a previous episode.
Mhm.
But that was more the Smash team, like, doing their own thing rather than Nintendo as a whole.
Exactly. And I mean, even the mini Direct was kind of lacking any sort of big announcements of any sort of new IPs or anything like that, which you would typically expect around now. Coming from Nintendo, typically they have some sort of releases throughout the summer, some in the winter, and so I think the last really big release, other than, like you said, Paper Mario, has been like all the way back in like January and such, when they're releasing games then. But I think
No,
COVID...
the most recent one was Xenoblade, because
Oh,
it is like
Xenoblade,
a
yeah.
big, was a
Oh,
big
yeah.
first party IP now.
That's true.
And even then, that's like a definitive edition. So
Yeah,
I think
it's
a lot
not
of
brand new
people
game.
are looking for those new IPs. I mean, the Switch is definitely a great console, but at this point, people are wanting new games, right? And I think now, even more than ever, with COVID going on, people kind of having more free time at home trying to play new games. For those of many people that already owned the Switch previously, might be going towards other consoles, maybe more interested in PS4 and Xbox coming out with new game announcements, and Nintendo kind of staying in the shadows.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of people are getting sick of just playing Animal Crossing.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the last big game that got released, really.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
yeah,
just
there's
like,
still a bunch of people who enjoy playing it, so I'm cutting you off for that.
but yeah, there. I was gonna agree with you saying there's like, of course, there's people who still enjoy like Animal Crossing, but that's a very select crowd.
Mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, even I have it, but I haven't played it since like
You
April,
played for
really.
20 seconds.
Okay, I have like 25 hours in it. I'll
You
really
played more
sell
of
it
it than I
eventually.
have, at least.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to hear it. But I don't know, a game that could be coming out at this Xbox Direct, which kind of was missing out of the PS5 showcase, which is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, which kind of got announced, I believe, in a previous kind of Direct sort of thing, but it's basically been nothing else past that, and I think a lot of people are wondering when this next Black Ops game is going to come out, what it's going to look like, what the price is going to be of Xbox in general, because neither the PlayStation nor the Xbox have announced what the price of their console is going to be, and obviously they're probably going to want to wait until whichever side says it first, and then they try beating it. I don't know what
Yeah,
the
I was about
strategy
to
there
say.
is, but
It seems pretty odd that they're both just like, I'm gonna wait for them to go first. They'll definitely say it first. It's just like, these like massive conglomerate companies doing like, no, you go first. No, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting approach. I think it's definitely more like a marketing strategy than anything. It's beneficial for the companies in general to wait this long, but like I said, from the mass majority of people who are looking at it being consumers, it is very, very annoying not knowing how much this console will cost, especially if you're trying to save for it now. Because, I mean, there's speculations of so many different prices, and like most people are kind of veering towards that 500 being like probably the guesstimate. But like, who knows? They could be like, launching it, then 350, not happening, or 700. Like it's not gonna happen, but there's that possibility of being that low or high where people, I mean, I will say more people are leaning towards the higher cost because of how good the specs are for a lot of these. But
and plus, you know that if they are doing, let's say, the thing that we're talking about, where one company announces it first and the other one prices it a little lower, you know absolutely what's going to happen is just like Xbox announces that the Series X is going to be $500. Well, the PlayStation 5 is going to be $498.
Yeah.
Let's go.
$2 less. Like, yep, you did it. You convinced me to buy a PlayStation because I saved $2.
Yeah. I mean, there's things like that, and I mean, like, recently as well, there has been actually an announcement from 2K Sports, which, for those of you who don't know, develops all of the sports games for like NBA 2K, for instance. The price of NBA 2K21 coming out is actually going to be increased from the traditional $60 to $70, which many people have kind of thought may happen in the future. But now that it's actually happening, there's definitely a lot of, oh shoot, my wallet's gonna be empty by the time some new consoles and games come out.
Joke's on you, my wallet's already empty. Got him.
Got him.
But I mean, it's understandable, right? There's so many things that go into these games. As games progress over the years, the amount of content that they're pouring into it, the textures, the time, and you can even just see it from the download sizes of a lot of these games are just increased value, really. And so for the longest time now, games have been releasing at that $60 price mark since basically the original Xbox, I believe. So you're really going to start seeing that price increase kind of hitting and seeing what type of companies are going to be choosing to go that route. Obviously, there's games such as Assassin's Creed Valhalla, who have already announced if you've bought it on a previous console, it's going to be playable on the PS5 or the Xbox One, whatever it's called. Series X, sorry. I hate Xbox naming convention. Can I just say that?
It's so annoying.
It's atrocious. Like, I don't know what they're doing.
Xbox Series, Xbox Series, Xbox Series X. Thanks for coming.
For real,
Buy it
it's
now,
so annoying.
$1,000.
Yeah.
But I do want to say regarding the price of games going up, this is not totally unheard of, because whenever the Nintendo 64 was like prevalent, a new Nintendo 64 game was originally $50, and then that increased to 60 whenever PS3 and Xbox 360 games started coming out. So
Exactly.
maybe this could just be like the next jump.
Exactly.
That's when I started to cry.
I mean, it is hard for the consumers to take that to the heart, but you have to think about it. Like I was mentioning earlier, there is going to be that continuation of the evolution of games, like Adi mentioned, and how the games are becoming more popular, how they're putting more time and more labor into these games, making them better. And so it is understandable that we're going to eventually need to be paying a little more for our games to get that AAA content that we really do want.
I just
of
wonder
course-
at what point it's gonna be where games will start costing $100 regularly, and then it's just like,
Yeah,
Like, hopefully by that time I'm not playing games anymore, because that's
gonna say.
way too much of an investment.
yeah.
And honestly, when you talked about like the labor of making games, that's a whole nother conversation that we can go to, because like I could talk for hours on that.
Yeah, and I
But-
mean, like, it's hard, right? It's a hard topic to kind of dwindle down to, because it's like, yeah, games are evolving, but like the income isn't going that much higher per person over the years, kind of thing. But a lot of comparisons that I like and a lot of people say is, I mean, think about entertainment in the normal media, right? For instance, a movie. Those are increasing over the past couple years. Obviously, you go to a movie, it's like $15. You're like, Jesus, this is expensive. But then think about games, right? If a movie's about 2 hours and that's $15, then multiply that by 4 at a $60 traditional game. That's only 8 hours. Most of these AAA titles that are charging $60, you're getting more than 8 hours worth out of entertainment.
Yeah, if you're talking about like a per dollar value, I'm still waiting to get my $2 worth out of Overwatch. for which is for the audience. Through extremely lucky circumstances, I was able to buy Overwatch its release year for $2, and I've played a lot of that game. Still waiting to get my money's worth out of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
I would say I'm just at least glad that I bought it off of a friend. He just happened to have an like extra copy of like some gold edition of it. I don't remember what it
Wait,
was.
Overwatch? You bought it off of a friend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he bought it off of a mutual friend
I'm
of ours.
reporting you to Activision.
But that really, I mean, you could spiral this into another conversation though of how much entertainment do you think you should be getting per dollar? And I guess that's more up to the person who's making the purchase, because like it could be like, I have 4 hours in the $60 game, it's $15 per hour, I'm satisfied. And to which I say, you're crazy, oh my god.
Like for me, the way that I see it, very simple. 1 hour, $1. If a game's $30, I expect around 30 hours of gameplay to be satisfied with my purchase and think that was a worthwhile purchase. But if I'm getting a game that's $60 and I spend like 10 hours in the game, then at that point I'm like, was it really, really worth like $6 per hour kind of thing?
I was saying, I'm glad I didn't spend over $1,600 on Rocket League then. 'Cause then only now will I get my money's worth out of it.
Yeah,
God,
we don't want to talk about the hours that we have in a lot of our games.
God, could you imagine like just watching 1600? Like I could never watch like a TV show or anything for like 1600 hours, because there's like those soap operas that go on forever. Like imagine like watching those for 1600 hours.
Yeah,
I would lose my mind.
If there were 1,600 hours of Love is War, you'd probably binge it all.
I don't want to talk about it.
That's true. I mean, like, think about it. I have a lot of hours in Rocket League. Smite, you guys have a lot of Rocket League hours as well, or Hitarth specifically. You have a lot of Smite hours, though, Audie. And I mean, like, a lot of our friends maybe have hours in, like, for instance, Sims or something like that. So, like, games like that where it's just, you put so many hours. I can say the same thing about my girlfriend. So, I mean, going off of Sims, though.
I would say we don't want to say names, but,
The Sims reality competition TV show coming to your television. What do you guys think about that?
Coming to a TV in
near you.
living room.
Well, I'm throwing my TV out the window then. What do you want about?
Premiering July 17th, we'll have the splendid Sims, which they're calling
July 17th.
The Sims Sparked.
Sparked?
The Sims Sparked, which is
what is this naming convention?
I couldn't tell you, but it's
I
a
don't
reality
understand this.
TV show treatment similar to Project Runway, those type of TV shows, which 12 contestants are going to be competing for $100,000 grand prize. And as far as what I can tell thus far, it's basically a ton of notable members of the Sims community coming together to compete in skills and elimination challenges that are similar to some challenges that are maybe in Sims, I believe, and trying to impress like a judge panel. I don't
Okay, so you'll have to enlighten me a bit on here, because I'm an outsider looking in when it comes to Sims. So are they trying to like recreate a certain scenario that the judges give them? Or
well, so what I don't understand fully is if this is supposed to be like them. What I understand thus far is that it is based around Sims 4, and the contestants are trying to basically do challenges like character design, home building, stuff like that, and whoever's is like the best. It is very unconventional if that is the case of how it's supposed to be, because I mean, it's like they're at a computer kind of doing something, and it's a TV show like competition. Very unconventional if that is the case. But I mean, it very well could be that they're doing like actual real life challenges. I have no clue. I haven't really. It got announced about 4 hours previous to us recording this, so I mean, very new content.
Yeah, this is very fresh news. But you say like real life challenges involving The Sims, and all I can think of is you need to make a house in The Sims, but you have to wear oven mitts while you're like trying to make it.
Yeah, I really don't know what it's gonna be, but I'm very interested actually to see how this pans out. And I mean, like, realistically, it could be the worst show I've ever seen in my life, which
That's
is very
exactly why I was
plausible.
watching it.
But at the same time, that makes it entertainment. So
I think my favorite thing is when they say, yeah, The Sims is an untapped gaming platform in terms of building a TV property. I was like, who thinks of this? Who in their right mind looks at The Sims and is just like, this is
Yes,
untapped potential
this is
for a
it.
TV show.
well, you know who thinks
God.
about this? The same people that are making like Assassin's Creed and like those type of movies where they're taking video game genres, converting it into movies or TV shows, and like some of them just don't need to be TV shows. I'm gonna be honest.
Can I interject with one that I'm pretty sure I heard of? You can correct me on this. I could totally be wrong, but isn't one of the ones on the docket Monster Hunter?
Yes, that
I
is
think Monster
one of
Hunter's
them.
getting a
I'm
TV show, right?
sorry.
So if you've ever played Monster Hunter, then you'll know it's basically a game where you're like tracking and fighting and capturing different beasts.
Is this
well-
live action?
That I do not know. I think it actually might be. But
What
a movie expected to release around September 2020 it says the movie will star Mila Jovovich, which I'm assuming is gonna probably be in real life acting, not actually voice acting. But that might be either the best movie or the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. Because
Okay. I went and found.
Okay, definitely not the
Wikipedia
best.
article for it.
No, definitely not the best.
All right, so Monster Hunter is scheduled to be released September 4th, 2020, and the premise is a United Nations military team falls into a portal into an alternate world where hunters fight giant monsters. Two
It is
groups
live
work
action,
together to
by the way.
defend the portal, thwarting monsters from entering and invading the Earth. You know, I mean, I guess it's true to what it's saying because it is based around fighting monsters. Imagine watching a movie called Monster Hunter with no monsters. I would feel so ripped off.
I mean, yeah. I think it'll do actually better than I think because of how generic the title is. And I think in that regard, it'll tie into like the demographic of people that already enjoy the game and they want to see a movie, but also the people that maybe just want to see a movie and like Monster Hunter, this sounds kind of interesting. Let's
Or
see
maybe
what that
somebody who
is.
just enjoys like action movies. It
Exactly.
could totally fall into that. Because
But
when you
whereas-
hear Monster Hunter, your brain doesn't immediately tie it to a franchise because one, it's not that well known, and two, Monster Hunters are like a pretty generic statement. you
Yeah,
know?
but like
was gonna
something
say-
like Warcraft, then you're like, okay, this is like a WoW movie. Like this is gonna be a little too specific for me.
It'll
Sorry,
probably
I
be a
understand.
very different experience for you guys since you guys like actually played through Monster Hunter versus I never actually did.
Yeah.
Barring I've only ever seen maybe like a total of 10 minutes of gameplay that I don't even remember. So honestly, like watching the movie probably be a little easier for me.
I mean, I think what's gonna happen because the basis of Monster Hunter is there's not a lot of plot. You just go out and like hunt these different like monsters that all act differently, have different attacks. So it's more about the challenge of the hunt itself rather than some like overarching world or story. So you're probably gonna go to the movies and be like, "Hey, I recognize that thing. That's a Toby Kadachi or an Anjanath, which are both beasts from Monster Hunter."
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would say because I think just like a point of reference kind of way. Like you'll watch it and like you said, you'll probably like recognize some of the monsters or so that. But for me, I'll just watch it and it'll just be some kind of like action film because I
Yeah.
have no point of reference for the game.
I mean, there's another movie that's coming out similar to like what you're explaining, being Uncharted actually, which is another game that's been very well known in the PlayStation community, being one of their most popular series. But it's gonna be played by Tom Holland, which I know that I've talked with Audie about this and Hitarth actually about one of our friends. I believe Eli had an issue regarding every like generic protagonist being played by Tom Holland and how it's getting really annoying. And so
he is getting everywhere. That's true.
Mhm.
But I wasn't
And
aware
so-
that Uncharted was making a movie.
yeah, it's supposed to be released December 2020, supposedly, but it's gonna be similar to kind of like Uncharted, obviously, but also kind of like Indiana Jones if you're not familiar with what Uncharted really is. And so that's gonna be a great action adventure kind of movie, and hopefully
Yeah.
that's a good one.
I find that pretty funny because the initial praise that Uncharted got a lot was, hey, it's like an action movie that I'm watching that you can play, which they're now making into an action movie.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, that one very well could be delayed. I think it already did get delayed, actually.
It already has been.
July
I think-
16th, 2021 is the release date as of right now.
Yeah,
So
that's the new one now.
that one got delayed a bit, and a lot of these that we're saying on this list could potentially be delayed or already have been.
Uncharted.
But
Is there any other stuff that like I haven't heard of?
yes,
Any other
actually,
franchise?
I got 3 more for you. We'll
Alright,
kind of
what you
run through
got?
these really quickly, but Resident Evil is actually getting an original Netflix series.
It's getting a series. Okay,
It
that's
is.
of note because I'm pretty well aware that Resident Evil has had a film franchise that's
Exactly.
been going on for like a pretty long while, but I don't think they've ever taken a crack at 3D at a TV formula.
Yeah, that one is one that's
I think
had
that one.
its film renditions already, but
I think currently that one seems like the one's gonna be most interesting from what I'm
I
hearing.
agree. But get this, you ready?
Alright.
Call
No.
of Duty. It's gonna get its
I'm-
own movie, baby.
I'm actually amazed that didn't happen earlier.
I
It's
know.
surprising that they took it to... I mean, can you really call it a video game movie if it's just based on warfare and we have plenty of movies about warfare at that point?
No.
Unless it's playing on taking a certain story from like one of the Call of Duty games and adapting that into a movie.
I don't know, to be honest, because I think it's set to be its own movie, but it really has had like no sort of announcement regarding anything, so it's still very, very early.
So just the idea is thrown about right now.
I think they already have a director and stuff like that, though, so it's supposed to be like combat and war, obviously, but like in a modern day setting as opposed to like their World War II kind of renditions of their
Yeah.
most recent ones.
I was gonna say, I wonder how they're gonna play it out, because it's like, yeah, this is a movie based on a video game that's based on actual war, and you're just like, wait,
Yeah, I
you
don't
just
really
cut out
know.
the middle part, and then
Yeah,
boom, you
I
have
mean,
a
it'll
history
just be like
movie.
exactly. But I think you guys are really gonna like this last one. I mean, it's very
Alright, hit me
close
with it.
and
There's
to our
another?
hearts. Yes, one last
Alright.
one on the list. There's very plausible that there's many more in development, but
Another Super Mario movie.
it's gonna be a Minecraft movie.
All right, guys,
Which-
thanks for listening. We
Alright, that was
I'm
a good.
just kidding.
Which that has been announced a while back, actually, about a year and a half ago. But there's been so many things going on that have delayed it. And so it's set to actually release March 2022, which is the latest one, coming in at the earliest announcement, which is kind of weird. But
Wait,
I
wait,
mean,
wait,
at this
wait.
point, I'm starting to wonder when we're gonna get like the Roblox anthology series on Netflix.
that's what
How
I'm
many stuff
saying.
is getting
What kind of
adapted.
style is this gonna be in?
I couldn't tell you, to be honest, but
live action Minecraft movie? Wouldn't
But-
that be a kicker?
it's when it got announced, they were like, it's coming right across the corner, and it's coming in March 4th, 2022, and it's like, that's not distant. It's only 1,053 days away, they said. It's like, okay, buddy, calm down.
Okay.
But I don't
actually
know.
said that there was a Minecraft movie prior to this. That's
No,
really
no,
funny.
this is this. It was the announcement, and it was like through Minecraft's like actual forum. But it's supposed to be set in like their quote unquote beautiful blocky overworld.
In
So,
this Minecraft world, so beautiful.
but I mean, it's Warner Brothers, so they're gonna have a decent like animation team behind
Oh yeah, I
it.
don't doubt it.
But I'm just like worried about like the general plot. And I mean, we've seen stuff from Minecraft already with story mode, and that got some pretty good stuff. But I mean, I guess we'll have to see realistically and see how the story unveils over the next couple years with video game movies.
I would say,
You
I just
know-
want to know whether we're gonna be looking at block people for a full movie, or we're gonna like actually have some live action kind of thing.
You know, I think we're probably gonna stop on that. Like that's given us a lot to think about. I think hearing that news has honestly changed my entire worldview on how I want to
Has
live my
it?
life till 2022. Yeah,
You're gonna think of World Blocky.
yeah.
I mean, speaking
don't
of Blocky,
step
hit the
outside.
subscribe block below.
Oh
I
my.
hate that.
Hit the
Alright.
like. But that's
Ignore
about
this
it
tool.
for our
Yeah,
show today.
That's all we have for the show this time. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful day, night, evening, wherever you are. Be sure to wash your hands, wear a mask, stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.
Don't be dumb. Goodbye.
Take
Take
it
care.
easy.